Hello and welcome to the BioStock studio here in the Medicom Village in Lund. I am joined today by the CEO of Scandion Oncology, Nils Brünner. Scandion Oncology is developing drugs aimed at counteracting drug resistance. Welcome, Nils.
Thank you.
So for those who are unfamiliar with Scandion Oncology, could you just go give us a little background about the company itself?
Yeah, so all the basis for Scandion Oncology was actually developed when I worked at University of Copenhagen as a professor there. We had a grant from a major government foundation called Grundforskningsfonden. It comes from money from the North Sea when they sold oil rights out there and so on. So for 6 years we had a Grundforskningscenter working on drug resistance in cancer. And for many people, it's new that cancer cells can become resistant to treatment. We all know that bacteria can become resistant to antibiotics. But in cancer, it's about half of the cases of the patients who are diagnosed with cancer who will die from the disease, and mainly because of drug resistance. I think it would be clear for everybody that if a cancer cell didn't develop resistance, we could kill them. We have so many drugs that we can use, but they become resistant, and they even become cross-resistant. That means they also become resistant to the other drugs. And as an oncologist, I have often have had to send the patient home together with the family to die, even though they were in good performance status. We didn't have anything more to offer.
I'd actually like to hear also about yourself a little bit, your background. How did you become passionate about cancer drug resistance, or this field, let's say?
Yeah, so of course, as soon as you enter as a doctor oncology, you can see where the problem is, that several times a day when you see, for example, 16, 20 patients, some of these will be patients where you have to tell that the cancer has become resistant, and you know they will die from the disease. So it's a tough thing, and I'm never satisfied if things doesn't work. So I took off from my job as an oncologist and went to United States to the National Cancer Institute in US, and worked there with drug resistance in cancer, actually with anti-estrogens, and made the very first human breast cancer cell lines being resistant to anti-estrogens. And then when I came home, I started in a job at Rigshospitalet in Copenhagen, part-time clinical work and part-time research. And we continued the work, and as I told before, we got this huge grant, and we developed a lot of tools, including a screening platform. We started screening drugs, whether they could interfere with drug resistance in our cell lines. We looked for how does cancer cells become resistant, because when you know it, you can design drugs, but you can also use these targets as biomarkers. That means what we are doing now also in Scandion Oncology, if we want to treat the patients, we should make sure that the patient have these resistant mechanisms in the cancer cells. So you take out a biopsy, and you, by different methods, you can see whether the target, if this is the way they became resistant, and then you can add your treatment. And then having drugs that we had identified, we decided to start Scandion Oncology. I did it together with my colleague. He was associate professor in my department, Jan Stenvang. And then together with Saniona, who owned SCO-101, and we made this spin out where they kept 51% and we got 49%. And that's, of course, both of them are diluted many times by raising money. I'd also been on the Swedish stock market twice before. I was for 4 years, 1 day a week, CEO for Wind Research. Many people know Wind Research, a Swedish biotech company. But when they needed more CEO time, I had to find a new one, which we did. And then I'm a co-founder of Oncology Venture together with my good friend Peter Bull. And then at some point, and we took that to the stock market also, but at some point we started Scandion Oncology, and of course I like to be in the steering seat here. It's been a very, very exciting journey, and fortunately everything has gone well now, and we are in phase 2, and that's where we want to prove that it works, proof of concept, and this is, I think, what the whole world is waiting to see. Does it work or does it not work?
Mm-hmm. So your top candidate, SCO-101, is in phase 2 clinical trials, as you just mentioned, and I was wondering if you could tell us, give us a status report on that trial and how that's going.
Yeah, so perhaps first I should just explain a little bit about the trial. So the trial is in patients with metastatic colorectal cancer who has become resistant to the drug irinotecan. And this drug, SCO-101, is reversing resistance against. And we've seen that in all our preclinical models. So we are recruiting patients into the study, patients who have failed prior chemotherapy. So there are no more treatment to be offered of standard treatment, but now they are offered to enter into our trial. And of course, they all say yes, because they're in good performance status. And the only hope now for them is that this will work for them. So they continue their chemotherapy, the same chemotherapy, but now added SCO-101. The first part of the phase 2 study is what we call a run-in phase, because this is the first time ever we combine SCO-101 with chemotherapy. And the worry, of course, was that not only the cancer cells will be more sensitive, but also the normal cells, and then we would see added toxicity. Fortunately, we don't. So we are at a level of 150 milligrams now, and will increase to 200 milligrams, but already at 150 milligrams, we know that the blood concentration of SCO-101 is at a level that in all our preclinical models have the desired effect. But we would like to go a little bit further. When we have reached a dose that we want to continue with, we go on and include 25 patients, and they can be included at once as soon as they are ready. And then we will look predominantly for effect. That means doing a scan to see has the tumor become larger or smaller. In addition to that, we are measuring a lot of other parameters on the patients to follow up on the effect of combining. So with no SCO-101, there will be no more treatment to these patients. If one continued their treatment without SCO-101, there would be no effect except the side effects, because they have already proven that they are resistant. So based on international guidelines, we need to have 2 patients or more during these 25 patients in the second part of it that have a benefit from the treatment, and they have proof of concept. And that is what it's all about. The first part is safety. Which dose should we go for? 3 patients at each dose. The second part is efficacy.
Mm-hmm. What timeline do you expect for the efficacy part of this trial?
Yeah, so I hope we will start the efficacy part in September this year. We have one approved protocol. That means we don't need to ask anybody. We can just continue, so we don't lose time. And I hope that end of this year or latest Q1 next year, we'll have all the 25 patients included.
Mm-hmm. A lot to look forward to then. You also have other candidates in your pipeline, and I was wondering if you could just briefly describe the other projects.
So as I told, during this Grundforskningsfond center we developed a platform to screen for new compounds, what we call repurposes. That means drugs that are already available that you could use and so on. And we have 2 other drug candidates. One is SCO-201 that we just published about, that we now have decided to take forward to what is called preclinical tox test. That means that you test in 2 different species how high doses can you give, and then take it to phase 1. It has never been in patients. The third one, SCO-301, you can actually buy at the pharmacy. So we tested also other drugs that we thought was of value to test. But we don't want to go with this one for specific reasons. So we are now making analogs and testing them in our systems. And when we have the right analog, we'll take them through the system. And also considering whether we should at some point start the screening again and screen for other drugs. On the other hand, we need to focus. We need to make sure that we have the resources needed to finalize SCO-101 and take SCO-201 to the next step. So the focus is now on SCO-101. And just to add something, we just announced that we got an Eurostar grant, EU grant, to look for anti-estrogens. So SCO-101 is not a drug for breast cancer, colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer. It's a drug that follows the chemotherapeutic drugs or the anti-hormone drugs. So all these 10 different cancer forms that receives taxane treatment, we can enter into it because SCO-101 inhibits taxane resistance. So it has nothing to do with the cancer form. It has something to do with the treatment.
Well, you mentioned the Eurostars grant, so that brings me to my next question, which is you've recently entered a couple of high-profile collaborations, one with 2cureX, another Danish company, and one with Alligator Bioscience. Yeah, I was just wondering, do you foresee several other collaborations coming in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Sweden. I think I told you before, in Borås. And my heart is here also. And that's why I actually entered the Silicon Valley Alliance in order to do some work there. And part of that work has been to try to engage Swedish and Danish biotech companies within cancer to work closer together. There's a lot of synergy to be obtained by doing this. So by being to many of these oncology network meetings, you hear about the other companies, and here I learned about more about Alligator Bioscience, and that's why I actually contacted Alligator Bioscience, and we started discussions, and I think they felt the same as we did. This could be a fantastic match. Regarding 2cureX, it's a biomarker company, and biomarkers are extremely valuable when you develop drugs, when you have early clinical trials, later on when it's registered. So in order to increase the chance of a positive effect of your drug, you can select the patients beforehand. Instead of taking everybody in, you just go for those with the highest chance of having benefit. And that means that your data will be much better, and the socio-economical calculations will be much better because you leave out those where you could already foretell that they wouldn't respond. So the collaboration with 2cureX is also very important.
Mm-hmm. You had news just yesterday, actually, about one of your founders, Sanyona, who recently decided to reduce the ownership from 18% to just below 15%. Could you comment on that? And
we learned about this Friday here last week, and of course, it's their money, and they are apparently in need of more money. So it's natural that they start selling some of their stocks. We don't have a contact with the management of Sanyona on a regular basis, while we are very happy for the opportunity to work together with their chemists, because we have a lot of analogs to SCO-101 that comes from them, and they are helping us and so on. So I think that's fine. We hope they don't sell everything at the same time on the market. I can say freely that I hope they will try to sell it outside the market, but we'll see how it goes. But definitely they are allowed to sell whatever they want, and they have no insider information.
Absolutely. Speaking of the market, Scandion Oncology has been performing quite well over the last year, and I was just wondering, from your perspective, what makes Scandion Oncology such an attractive company?
I think there are a couple of things. The most important thing is that we are targeting a major problem. If we can succeed by reversing drug resistance in cancer, it will affect millions of patients every year. So it's a major thing. Secondly, we've been lucky. We've been busy, but we've also been lucky. So we have been able more or less to deliver on time and met all our milestones. It's a very interesting travel we have had here, going from the different steps and now already being in phase 2, 1.5 years after we had our IPO. So, and the third thing is that many investors have said that, Nils, if this works out, we'll all get a lot of money, and that would be fantastic. But even more importantly, if it doesn't work, at least we have contributed to cancer research and tried one avenue. And I think that is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Very important. And one last question, finally. You spoke about milestones, and I was wondering, both in the short term and the long term, what milestones do you foresee for Scandion Oncology?
Yeah, I mean, there's one just around the corner. So when we have finalized the first 3 patients, which will be very soon, we have promised to send out a press release, and this is a milestone. But next milestone, of course, is to finalize the dose escalation part of this one, so we can go to the 25 patients. Next milestone is to finalize that and report on the efficacy. But as a third milestone will be to start the pancreatic cancer study. We already submitted all the papers to the Danish Medicine Agency, and my expectation is that we'll start Q3 2020 with enrolling the first patients, and then it will go the same route. Then we also have our collaboration with Alligator Bioscience. That's going to be very, very important to see how the animal studies the results will come out. This is a major milestone because we want to take it that direction.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Nils, and we definitely look forward to following Scandion Oncology and seeing what comes next.
Thank you.